Boom! Recording in progress. It's
Ah,
yes. Welcome.
hey,
This is Ryan, known also on Discord as Reezy Blunts, and
mhm,
and an old gamer tag. And um, we met digitally on the Formscapes Discord server, and we've had
mhm.
some great conversations. And I figured, hey, maybe let's record. Who knows? We might not post this, but we might just keep it for ourselves, But
Yeah,
here we are.
I,
We're doing it.
I
And
think we were getting into it just naturally from whatever the conversation was, and we had some interesting conversations already, and thought
yeah,
like actually we probably could have just recorded some of that and gleaned something from it because I think we were on to a right track about kind of synthesizing some of the ideas, and I know you have a slightly different angle. I think we all do from perspective wise, but we're kind of coming to the same uh, place in a
sure.
sense where we're
Yeah.
trying to figure things out. So Formscapes Discord has been interesting place for that because um, people are all looking at something.
hmm Yeah, for
um,
sure. No, it's a very interesting set of people. Shout out Forms, shout out Keelan, like for real.
mhm.
It's both like the space, like it's I don't know if it's quite TLC level community type of
Yeah,
ship vibes. However, it's really great and there's friendships and like deep conversations and vulnerability oftentimes, and it's wonderful. And also of course Keelan's content, it attracts a very interesting crowd of people. It's super cool.
yeah,
And
both his content and like just like you said, for him to create that space, it's
yeah,
definitely really cool bringing people together. And he's also just in there, like teaching people and
100%. Yeah,
sharing his knowledge all the time. So that's
yeah,
why
yeah,
I think it sort of feeds that community in a sense because everyone's there, they're friends, and they like to talk to. But in a certain sense, like people want to hear, I think, like yeah, what Keelan has to say, or
yeah,
and
for sure.
just works out his thoughts there. And there's some
And
other
he's
really
very, yeah, and
smart
it's cool.
people in there.
Sorry. Yeah, it's very cool how you just said that. Sorry, at the end you said there's some other cool people as well talking. That's
Mm-hmm.
true. Yeah, lots of people with kind of but it's also cool how he's very personable in the sense that like he's very open about his kind of life and his YouTubing and such. And it's very cool. He's a good dude. Shout out to
Yeah,
him. Yeah.
that was a interesting experience because yeah, I you listen to someone for a while and then
Mhm.
suddenly
Yeah. Breaking the fourth
he's just
wall.
like talking. I'm talking to him and
Yeah,
I'm like,
man.
wait, oh, he talks
Yeah.
back. Oh,
Yeah. Dude.
yeah,
He's very
but
similar too, like to his you like, he kind of has that demeanor. He's an entertainer and it's but not in like a bad way. It's like in a complimentary way. I mean, and um yes, and
that's been exciting for me. I had to like yesterday try and be like, okay, I'm not gonna get on because
mhm.
I'll get too distracted and should.
Yeah, no, that we've been talking a lot on there, and I've been talking a lot on there, and the past couple of months or a month or two, and yes, it's very easy to get lost in conversations or like listening to people babble or show their screen with something, and but yes, this is the moment where we try to
Yeah,
enter into self-forgetfulness as if we are just on the Discord server like usual. Like,
yeah.
how's
I
your
just don't look at my face in the
Yeah,
corner and
I actually often my cup here is kind of in the way, but
I'll
I often
get rid of it
often
there.
cover my face because it's very odd, these recording dynamics. This is the first time I've seen your face.
Hmm.
We were just talking a little bit before starting the recording. It's like it's just crazy how like just we don't have to get into it, get all
Mhm.
self-aware about it, but the fact that things being recorded and such, it's like that you can see yourself as well. Digital's freaking wild.
Yeah.
We live in a wild world. Hopefully,
Or like you try and talk if you hear like a slightly delayed echo of your voice.
mhm.
It's impossible to like keep talking because it's feedbacking right into you.
Yes, and that's really, I think, a very key thing about it, which is like a distinction, is the temporality aspect, insofar as it's not a continuous, um, a continuous communion. It's broken up into digits, and but
Mhm.
also just in the sense of lag, in the sense that we start a call and then we're suddenly like present in a sense, even though like, and then like it's like, all right, bye, and then the person's just gone. It's like, and
So
or
yeah,
like, yeah, and then with
that's a reincorporate into reality.
yeah, and then with texting, it's even crazier because like you don't know if you don't see the person's immediate response like at all, and like they could wait days. You don't know if they've seen it. It's so like it's not to say that they're useless, of course. Like this is amazing that we can do this, but it's just like I think these
Yeah,
differences are very important, and as we kind of increasingly go in this digital direction, yeah,
yeah, it would be great if somehow we could, go to a spot and we were all there and could just hang out and look at ideas and talk that way. But yeah,
yeah.
in the
That's what I'm
uh,
ultimately hoping to do something like that. Even if it's just kind of more so conceived as like me moving out with some friends, like somewhere where we can host events and like put live streams together and stuff like that.
mhm.
I mean, more to come on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully, yeah.
But it was still, I still am able to like view that as a sense of like community I would feel in Discord. I'm pretty used to hopping in Discord, but even still talking to people that I haven't met was a change. But it was really like pleasantly surprising to come in and then um, usually types of things that I would say, people would just like, oh, that's some weird, crazy idea. But then in this space, there's a lot more times where people are just like, oh, tell me about that. I want to listen. And then,
Yeah, it's freaking
allow me to go on some
yeah,
diatribe. Okay,
yeah,
you want to hear me talk? I'll talk at you.
yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
a
so
wild
that's
world.
been energizing to me for sure, and just kind of brought me to a spot I think where I have a lot more passion to engage with the ideas and stuff that I've just been mulling over for so long
Mhm.
and thinking about, but actually having more of a space to get those ideas out and then get feedback and stuff. It just makes it way more exciting. Yeah. So
100%. Yeah, and it's hard to find people like this, people who are, it seems like generally speaking, most people are, I think you can kind of have conversations with anybody, but people who have the shared context in terms of like knowing stuff from having listened to things or like having read about particular topics, like it really opens up a whole different thing, and it can be hard to find those people in person. I always think the danger is that we get stuck here, and only have those deep conversations through the internet rather than like the struggle of trying to find them in person, as it were. Um, but I'm not,
yeah,
that being said, I think it's so amazing that we can, find these people and ultimately hopefully meet up in person. Like that's the kind of, that would I think amend the worries and whether it be events or relationships, people moving together and all sorts of stuff. Relations. And um
yeah. That's a thing that's just super salient, super like topical, I guess, right now. I mean to say, everywhere we look, we're constantly just faced with this encroaching techno like
mhm.
technology or something along that lines that is just creeping into our lives more and more. And a lot of people, especially of the kind of more spiritual philosophical outlooks are concerned. I think yes, it's definitely a justifiable concern. I I think it's not that I'm not concerned in the same way. I do have those same sentiments, but I think when I have that feeling, I tend to search around for like different alternative like interpretations to it to question like is this really like the right perspective to be looking at it, and I try and build a counter case, right? You know, I want to steel man that idea,
Mhm.
and I think like I can sort of see it from both sides in that like this technology, it does, you know, in many ways kind of isolate us from the natural world and this natural communion and humanity and stuff, but in another sense it like speeds up those things and those processes, and maybe it's just the way that the world is going, and that this like, you know, there was a time when all of this natural human interactions and nature and things were the way that we that was the environment, but our environment is changing, and I guess, you know, we can lament it or we can celebrate it, but ultimately it is just changing. So that's why to be a bit um, like more accepting or celebrate these things that like AI allows us to do and the Zoom allows us to do, and just try and utilize it as best as possible rather than getting like hung up on some like deficit that's from a previous age.
Mhm.
Um, this is kind of the same thing as like, you know, Socrates has quotes about the youth of today are the such and such, and like it's
Mhm.
always kind of like,
All these damn kids with their phones and shit.
yeah, back in my day we used to talk on the telephone, not on Discord, and
Yep.
we listened to
There's a bit of that.
phonographs. Yeah, so but it's not it's everyone I think is just really uncomfortable because it's shifting so much faster than it ever has. But
Mhm. That's what I was reminded of when you were talking there about how Steiner said that like these things are kind of inevitable to some extent, except evolution's going like way faster than it should be, or something like people are like the Luciferic is like this futurism, like going. He phrased it with like etherization, like becoming more ethereal or something, the loosening of the etheric body.
yeah,
However, basically the idea was that like you know, it's this going into the next stage of humanity, as it were, and like he said that people were pushing this too fast, and also like with like the Ahrimanic stuff, he also said it was inevitable or and it had to happen to some extent. I kind of am a little worried about that, you know, in terms of like whether or not these things are just
mhm,
inevitable, but I do think, you know, that's at least when we look at how it's going, it seems like probably inevitable to some extent that
mhm.
like there's this continuation of this matrixification trend is what I would term it. But
Yeah.
I also
The-
see that I also definitely see that it is you know, kind of an ambivalent um, you know, could go either way type of thing. You know, like if I'm associating it, if we're going with that Lucifer association, which is maybe weird because it's also Ahriman, like with the mechanization of everything, but um Ariel to Baalath in this creating this maze like a prison almost. But if we're going talking about like um I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, that's me. Um talking about Lucifer
well, there's a paradox you were bringing up, right? That like this, we can look at something as inevitable in a sense that Steiner talks about it, and I think like, yeah, like you said, it is inevitable, but then we run up against this problem where we want to have free will,
Mm.
we want to have indeterminacy, and we want to have like something at stake, you know, if the universe is just on a track and going along the lines of inevitability, this is what has to happen, and it's just all fated in that way. We it's, I wouldn't even frame it to say that we just don't like it. I would say it's conflicting with the reality that we actually, you know, phenomenologically inhabit. We can sense these things in ourselves, like a will, a mind, subjectivity, and there's all kinds of like scientific and naturalistic arguments that say that you know, it's all an illusion based on matter. But um, not to get into that, but I would say that yeah, it's real, right? We do have a mind, we do have a will, and so then we have to wonder how can that be possible to like have this determinacy or that is happening. And I think it's not like a matter of this is exactly the way it was fated to happen because this is just the natural result. It's more like as we're moving and as we're progressing and exploring space, and as society kind of does these things and we explore the different radical ends, there's sort of a confluence of ideas that grows as paths overlap with each other in a sense. And I would say it's like that is just the direction that we're sort of traveling in. It's not that any one thing had to happen. It's just we're seeing a kind of unfolding of what is naturally in that space that we've already set on. Like there was a trajectory going back from the dawn of dawn of modern consciousness or something, you know, the perspectival, or even something at like the magical consciousness time period from Gebser. But we, in a sense, then are doing this inevitably because that's just space that we're still expanding into. It's just there. And so it's maybe that's kind of how we can think about that paradox, I guess. Similar, real quick, and I want to let you respond. But Steiner has another thing about like vegetarianism, and saying that, well, you should, I guess. And in one sense, he's like, yeah, it'd be better to not eat animals, and whichever point of that. But he's saying that it's not something that you do because, you know, you feel like your body wouldn't be right for that. If you just decided to, you won't be able to be sick. But when you get to a certain point of kind of spiritual awareness, it becomes like a natural, you will become disgusted by meat in a sense. You won't want to eat it. I don't know if that's, you know, true, but as an example, right, that's how it's inevitable. Like you will eventually, in that framework, in one of your reincarnations, end up becoming a vegetarian, more or less, because eventually as you grow, you'll just come to it. But you kind of have to be in the space where you're at currently. So for some people, they are, and some people, they won't. And yeah, that's kind of how I think about that sort of paradox of inevitability.
Yeah, it also reminds me of like the archetypal kind of or astrological way of thinking about things where, you know, there can be an archetype of a time, but there can be many expressions of that. And it's kind of how we relate with this. Like it's if it's daytime, you know, like we could, you know, the sun's coming up, but we could be like doing things that are like you have to act in harmony with the times, as it were, and it's like if the times are about redeeming Armon, then or something like that, then we best to do that. Otherwise, like we have the bad expression of Armon or something like that. I don't know. Like
Mhm.
Steiner also talked about like moral technologies. That was another thing that came to mind. I don't know, but interestingly, but this was all a tangent off of the weirdness of the digital recording medium, because I said, this is the part where we pretend like we're just in Discord, a normal
We
call.
got into it
Now,
somehow.
now I'm all just thinking about it. But but yeah, so maybe to shift gears a bit, how's your last 24 hours been? Anything new and exciting? I also wanted to. There's kind of a thing with the spaces I frequent where people usually ask. They kind of call it like a rando format, like a conversation with randos.
Mhm.
Where you ask the go-to question is, "Tell me about the home you grew up in," and but you don't have to go down to that. And but if tell me
Yeah,
a little bit more about
mm,
yourself, or
tell you about
what's been up in your life and such.
yeah. So, well, I mentioned kind of how these lately. I've been working on these ideas more in a kind of coherent fashion, and so I've told you
Give me something
a little
more.
bit
Give me something
about.
more. Give me something more corporeal. Something,
Yeah.
where are you
So,
where are you
like,
from? Where are you from?
where? Okay,
You don't have to get
we'll
into
go to that. That's the
yeah,
second.
you don't have to get into like super details, but
No, yeah, I'll just so I'm in Portland, Oregon. I was born and raised here. I moved from the time I was like 23. I think I spent from the ages of like 23 till 28 in Southern California, just to kind of as a place to go where I had some other family there and just wanted to try living in a different location, and it's close enough. One day, just kind of packed up my life. It was like, yeah, I mean, I had a job, but I could get other jobs. So moved down there, but and it was really nice because I got to be around some of my family, especially as like my niece was really young and just growing up, and so I could be a part of their lives. But ultimately, I kind of felt really drawn back to Portland. Um, just always kind of seemed like my home in a sense. And so I get kind of, uh, I miss the rain. I miss the colors and of all the blossoming foliage and the freshness of the air. So I I think I would always need to be in some place that has like forests.
yeah, I feel that.
But I could see like, I mean, other places too that are really beautiful for sure.
Mhm.
So that's like my orientation on like geographically. I've pretty much been Pacific Northwest or West Coast my whole life. I've been to Mexico briefly, but I haven't really even crossed into like past halfway
Mhm.
the other way of the US, from like Montana, Oklahoma line is pretty much the farthest I've been.
Mhm.
Uh, and I don't know like what that is because I think I'm a lot more inclined to want to really deeply explore like this area and around here before just like hopping and going like I want to see New York and just spending a weekend there.
No, I think this is super important, like the connection with the land from which like people will talk about all sorts of stuff in this regard, but uh, the importance of the land, because it's also
Mhm.
you're constituted of of the elements of, your physical body is constituted of the elements of where you were born, essentially, with the food over time. It's kind of, it's mostly with the food there, um,
Mhm.
and just the certain rootedness and like, it's crazy. People like, I think the fact that we don't have all these spiritual concepts is interesting when it comes to like air travel and stuff, because people like, people talk about like jet lag and like maybe it takes longer for like your etheric body to show up or something. I don't fucking, I don't know, but yeah, heard that. No, I have lots of respect for that kind of some localism vibes. Also,
Yeah,
yeah.
and other places are definitely cool. I mean, I would love to go like to places in Europe. There's
Hmm.
amazing things to go see over there, and all throughout the world, lots of cool
Hmm.
places to go. But I just haven't run out of like interesting things to do here. There's still like multiple national forests in Oregon that I've never really gotten to spend time in, and they're all actually pretty different, I would say. I mean, yeah, similarities, but just
Hmm.
like even can tell a lot difference in climate when you get to like slightly into eastern or central Oregon. It most of the state is actually like very arid and deserty, um, and
Heard that. Well,
yeah.
heard that. How about I think I've already asked you some of this. Like I'm pretty sure I knew you live in Portland, but making your debut here. um,
Yeah.
the
So I'll tell you more about my
Sure,
myself.
yeah.
My, like,
Did you grow up? I think I already knew this, but uh, you grew up a Christian. Yeah, you grew up in
mhm.
a more Protestant type of environment, right?
Yeah, it was a Protestant. It was actually Seventh Day Adventism.
Hmm.
Was
I don't know a whole lot about that.
so yeah, Seventh Day Adventism. You can find a lot of different takes on it,
I'm sure.
but it's the main point is that the, they uh, have their Sabbath on Saturday, which is like the traditional in Judaism. It's on Saturday, right? And so it's basically kind of that. It's like another one of these Protestant disagreements about what way to interpret Scripture. And so um, the other the other aspect of it, because that's pretty much the main thing. Um, the other aspect is that there was sort of this like cult like um, element to it where they have uh, this prophet Ellen White, and she has her own writings. And um,
Okay.
but for me, I did not know about Ellen White or any sort of like other ideas about Adventism
Hmm.
until way later, like maybe like 14, 15, when I started to like talk to other people who grew up Adventists, and they were like, yeah, they're always talking about this in my church. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. Like pretty much I thought it was the same, but you go on Saturday.
Hmm.
Uh, so I didn't get like the indoctrination of that world so much as just um, this basic Protestant Protestantism, I would think, pretty much describes it. But that I think that idea that like there was the majority of Christians are getting it wrong. How can they not see that Sabbath is
Hmm.
supposed to be on the Saturday? Why would you
Kind of
change
like it's kind of like
it?
a conspiratorial, almost like a flat Earth type of thing. Like
Yeah.
maybe
And so it's
not to totally write him off, of course, but
well,
yeah.
right. I mean, I think if you there's this argument's been had out, so I'm not like they're they're both settled on their sides, but I think that made an impression on me from an early age of this idea that um, just going with the flow and just like doing whatever everyone else is doing is not how you're going to get to
That's good.
a better idea. And
Yeah.
so that kind of started like,
And that's kind of the Protestant thing in general, in a sense. It's like the group has it wrong. It's like in a sense.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you come to grapple with those ideas and you find out, well, okay, in some sense, the group has it right. And you have to
Mhm.
kind of find a relationship with that. But I think that is when I look at my life and the way I was thinking about things from an early age, it is informed by that. The other thing, just having, I think my mom was really the religious uh, person in our household more
Mhm.
so. She was the one dragging us off to church and sending, um,
Heard that.
her struggle with being kind of an intellectual. To some extent, she's she's reader, and she went to college. She's a nurse, but she's like invested in all of that, the sciences and things, because it's kind of like important to her to view all of creation as this you know beautiful plan of God, and that's like her conviction
Cool.
about it. But so she immediately, like, during that time period when well, I guess both of us pretty much similar, growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, like the dynamics of like science and faith, science and Christianity, it was like so much more opposed in a way, like
Mm.
evolution and all these young earth creationists and things. Keelan explains this point pretty well in one of the
Mhm.
videos. But that, to me, I think at an early age, trying to like grapple with both at the same time, and
Yeah, no, that's cool that your mom had like kind of was trying to mediate that and like you kind of saw that in her. Yeah. Yeah.
mhm. But I think conversations going back to like maybe like 5 or 6 years old, like being in preschool and just trying to ask, wait, like, how is it like I heard something like
Hmm.
God is all powerful, he can do anything. So like, doesn't that create some sort of problems? Like,
Hmm.
could God make it so that God wasn't there, or any of those things? Like, I it's not that any of that's extremely profound, but I think that these like concepts kind of were
Deep,
placed on me
like
at a time
planted.
when I like so I've always had that as sort of a ground
Cool.
reference to want to figure out all that stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. No, that's cool. I mean, did you kind of like ever, I imagine with some of those scientific arguments, it's kind of like you were becoming a bit more skeptical. Obviously, you kind of moved a bit more away from the Seventh-day Adventist stuff. Like, I don't know, do you feel like you've kind of gone through this? A lot of people talk about deconstruction as a bad thing, but I often see it that people kind of absolve a slightly incoherent faith and then come to a deeper understanding and realization and like,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I went through a whole deconstruction process that is still probably still occurring, but um, I think it might be a little bit um, counter to, I guess, the expected experience. Like, usually, I think as you grow up, you find out more about science, and you conflict it with your religion, and you kind of over time like, okay, this one wins out.
Mhm.
But I I guess I just had the opposite sense, where I definitely lost faith in like the church as an
Institution.
institution of religion, and maybe like, and over time also like whatever my idea was at that time of like a biblical literalism, um, but I never at any point in my life like questioned if I believed in a creator God,
Mhm.
essentially, just because I felt like I was able to like I don't know, it seemed like an eminently apparent fact
Mhm.
about the universe. And like if for whatever reason, there was nothing like that, and we're just, kind of the modern materialist conception of, well, you die and then you just die and your atoms return to dust and stuff. And like if that were the case, like, I mean, that sucks, I guess, but there's no harm in believing that there was a reason. Like, you don't get anything out of believing that, and also, it just it wouldn't really be worth it. Like, but I guess
Mhm.
it wouldn't be not worth it either. It's
Mhm.
just be meaningless, and I don't. It's not interesting. And it's not what doesn't comport with
Mhm.
what I can perceive, which
Mhm.
I think to me that is just something that is apparent in the same way that like I know like about the whole thing with Descartes. Like I think, therefore I am. You can tell that at least you think when you have an experience with another sort of consciousness, and you know that that consciousness is something that's so far and above you that it like you can only think of yourself in terms of relating to it. Like it's not something that's just oh, you imagine it. It could just be a trick in your head. So sorry, got a little
It's
off
all
track.
good.
But
Yeah, that's cool. That's probably the main, I would assume, just based on like my impression of what they say about like psychology and developmental psychology and stuff. That's probably like the main difference between us, like psychologically speaking, and just because I um wasn't like particularly like enmeshed in like a more spiritual context, um and it's super cool. It's kind of the goal, it's like in a sense it's like that, like you uh I don't know, it's cool. It's just cool to think about, that people can be brought up in this stuff. And of course, you do have this kind of U-shaped journey of like re-examining your beliefs and such, but like the fact that you're kind of born into this context through your mother of trying to mediate science and spirituality, it's like that's what we're looking for. It's like that's people who are, I'm not gonna be the one to freaking develop etheric vision or whatever it may be, constellation, like eurythmic rhythmic immanentization of the Christ. Like it might be my children or the next generation or something, and like so it's cool to like that, it can be done, that you can raise kids who like you know
yeah,
you know
and you're participating in a different way, which is just like what you're doing with your channel and with the conversations, but also like
yeah. Oh yeah,
compilation.
I very much think that these things are purposive, this move towards into, like Keelan talks about, with subjectivity, it's like the fact that we kind of this whole prodigal journey into science and pure subjectivity and the abyssation of the ego and the sense of separateness from God and everything, like it's Christ on the
Mhm.
cross that we're going through, in a sense, That's what he would say.
Yeah, it's
And yeah, it's what
whole mystery to unpack. But yeah, whatever it was, like Keelan, for example, because he's talked about it, his path, he started, and I think it's like such an opposite trajectory of mine. But like he started this rational, skeptical, even like new atheist stuff, and then like if I would have met Keelan and talked to him at that point, we would have not about. I would have we
and
would
this
have
is
had
a sign of,
opposite.
and
And somehow they came back together. But I had to, like, I did not take seriously evolution, which was a big shortcoming, but it came from the fact of like the misrepresentation of that general idea into like Darwinism, basically, which I mean, and Darwin did have some like important points, but to take that and make it into like this materialist, dogmatic thing, and the fervor, like I,
the fervor, dude. Fervor, what a
before.
great word. Fervor, like the fervor is the problem these days, or something, you know, with everyone.
Yeah, the religiosity of science, TM or scientism, whichever you want to use to do that. But so I had, you know, even like the idea of, oh, maybe Einstein was wrong, and maybe maybe Darwin's wrong, maybe Newton's wrong. Like, you know, those were very like I'm already like trying to. One day I'm gonna tell you why Einstein's wrong. I just got to figure out all this stuff first.
It's somewhere.
But he's not getting it. So I had that much more kind of counter, and it wasn't like, I think that it's easy to assume that it's like sort of that young earth creationist vibe. It's like, no, it can't be that because it says so in the Bible. Like I was always okay with these arguments about like, okay, you could view the Genesis story as evolution unfolding. Maybe that's the path that God that's the method that God uses to create. I'm like, cool, that's good, that works, but you still have to tell me why I should believe that that would exist anyways. Like you gotta have some other reason, and I think anyways, I won't go too much into evolution, but that's just the
no, I hear you.
It was a little bit more nuanced, but evolution and just history. So like it winds up in being like a lot of conspiratorial things, and I don't want to say like you should go look up conspiracies and believe them, but it's more like I think it's important to stop whenever you see an idea that's wild and ask like if there's actually some interest, and just go explore it. And then like if you explore that and really fully understand it and try and see what the difference is, then you can see a much better picture than if you just say, no, that's wrong, this is, let's label it and put it over here. You know, that is pseudoscientific, so we don't have to look at it. Like and that's been like the method of science for a long time, or the method of like academic like scholarship of what gets talked about and what's allowed to be considered a smart idea, until I think more and more recently with the kind of stuff that's being talked about here, and like Whitehead's work getting talked about more, Steiner getting talked about more, we're able to sort of hold that tension between what might be pseudoscientific and what is actually like a sort of like emergence of a thought that it will take shape and be instructive.
Whoa. Like Cameron just did a thing. It did a.
Oh, did I go?
Yeah, that was cool.
Negative minding.
Time. Yeah.
So that is eventually, it was a hard thing for me to, like, even when I think I would give credit to Keelan for this, because I was very anti evolution as a model. Like I mean, I can understand adaptation, and we can understand like along time periods in this things could change, but like I feel like there's really very faulty explanation as to how these larger scale like transitions actually occur, and just saying, well, it's got to be millions of years.
Mhm.
It seems like it's like, yeah, okay, so at what point do we get to any sort of satisfactory answer? So
Yeah.
Elon talking about this stuff with Gebser and um, evolution of consciousness, in a sense,
Mhm.
it made me have to reconsider things from a new angle, because I kind of mostly took the view that like we're, as a like human organism, kind of declining, I guess. And I think that's more like from a religious Christian view. They kind of have this like God made Adam, and then since then we've just been in the fall, right? We're falling and we get redeemed, but it's not until later that we get to be this way. And then it made me take a lot more seriously the kind of the perspective that actually maybe we're developing in a different way. Like, not that our ancestors were not intelligent, because clearly they were
Mhm.
extremely intelligent in different ways, but the structure of our consciousness changing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and kind of applying like a telos to that evolution, I think is important to make that actually make sense. And having a framework for it gives me a way to
Yeah.
say, I'm invested. Okay, let's explore it more. So that's been my deconstruction, is almost
Yeah. Heard that, man. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, yeah. It's funny to think about old Keelan and you like 10 years ago, maybe talking or something. And I think it's a sign of the times, the fact that like these people can kind of have a shared story to some extent, and that there is these people like Whitehead and Bergson and Steiner who help us bridge this gap, and it's pretty epic. It's pretty epic, and and yeah, and maybe that's a good place to kind of shift more into like I don't know if there's again just kind of like we're talking on Discord here, I mean, um, I don't know. We could I feel like although there's kind of we could kind of get in the weeds a little bit about like what is that in between? What is that bridge between uh you know I don't know maybe I don't know, maybe another thing, just bring it back to the present. I don't know. Have you been thinking about anything in particular past? I think we spoke on the Discord just a day or two ago as I was falling asleep,
yeah.
and then uh,
I've been more or less just kind of obsessed. I feel like maybe yesterday and today is like more of a normal, okay, I'm
mhm,
back to normal on this, but I've been trying to make sure I don't like completely put the idea out of my mind, so that I
mhm,
can try and find that space. Because I don't know if you maybe call it an epiphany, because I don't know if I really figured anything else out new that it was. It's just that in trying to explain myself and thoughts and things, then um, I have to put it into sort of a rational framework. And then, so by dialoguing with people and trying to make it make sense, I realized that certain things just kind of clicked into place a little bit. And then, so that's about the just nature of reality and physics, and how
yeah,
the laws of
yeah, man. It's crazy. The dialogical mode, like speaking with people, it just helps to cohere what you've been thinking about, and like to make it more articulate and such, like even if it is like you said, it's still this kind of apophatic mystery, like or whatever, like in the sense that we use other people's jargon often to help articulate this stuff, but just like yeah, I feel that, man. Talking in that Discord, it's just been like blah blah blah, blah things clicking together and like
Yeah.
yeah.
And now I'm like coming to write something down if I'm like writing it, and this is like, I don't know, for example, like we'll say I'm writing something about time and I'm trying to get my thought out and like logically derive it, and I'm finding that like the language is already there. Like when I was classifying a structure of time, I came up to a point where it was in 3 dimensions, a lattice, and that's like
Yes,
a
yes.
crystal lattice structure, right? But isn't that idea is like already in the zeitgeist? Like time and crystals
Mhm.
are somehow
Yeah.
already linked in our minds in a way, and I'm sure that there's somebody who's said this before, that time is a lattice or something like that, and it like was an idea that I heard. I like it's in there, but I never made a true sense of it. I'm like, okay, you think
Mhm.
whatever, and then try and get to the point that you're using this metaphor for. But now I'm seeing it's like, no, you're not. It's not a metaphor.
Mhm.
um, so that those things have been on my mind a lot.
Heard that.
But what was it? Reminded me of something. Oh yeah, going back to my mom. It was a story she told me one time, when we were in a conversation, and she had went to a Stephen Hawking event where he gave a speech or a presentation of his ideas, and he had like a assistant to help him answer the Q&A thing, and the whole Hawking cosmology with the Big Bang and whatnot. Well, my mom had asked the question at the event, like, you talk about these laws of the universe, but where do these laws, you didn't explain them. Where do they come from? They just assumptions that you started out with. Um, and so where do they come from? And her frustration was that the assistant to Stephen Hawking had she felt like had dismissed the question and moved on, because they probably recognized that this was somewhat of a
Mm.
religious implication or something.
Like
But
like maybe he had something to say, but he like couldn't say it, type of thing.
yeah, well, her sense, I think, was that Hawking himself would have like wanted to grapple with the question, or would be more capable of it, but that the assistant kind of was redirecting it away from any sort of invocation of a god. Or like I said, this conception of like the science and God, they're very combative. Like,
Mhm.
um, I think it's important to like transcend that viewpoint to see that I think both sides probably are in general doing their best to come up with like the right answer. I think that that's not always the case. Some people do have bad intentions, but most part, this like scientists as a whole, they have a conviction because they believe in some sort of set of propositions that lead them to this what they think is very logical, but they end up getting sucked into a dogma the same way that the overly dogmatic religious person does.
Mhm.
And actually, both of them coming together is what kind of leads into more, yeah, more growth.
Yeah.
So that was a thing in my mind as I'm working on these new ideas. Like it kind of felt like a good conclusion to say, like,
Yeah.
I have answered the question.
Yes. Yeah, man.
Here are where the laws of the universe come from, and that's sort of my little project right now that I've just been
Mm.
like trying to
Yeah.
change from some dimension.
Yeah, I remember it's kind of like this is the one with the you have the different like the squares basically, and like the and how like the process unfolds, and like the basically how the laws of or like the dimensions in a sense, like not necessarily in like dimensions like this, even though you could think of it like basically the aspects of the laws come to be in a sense, or like how they kind of reality unfolds.
Yeah, and I think so. The very like direct impetus of all this was um, something I heard in a video. I think, yeah, pretty sure it was what something Keelan said, and talked about mathematics, and he just said like, well, it's true that math is essentially kind of mercantile because that's the way that it was first used, and this is like a kind of a bias in the way we use math, or the way we've conceived of this thing of math. It's all about quantity and like accumulation and such. These it's just measures of quantity, and it's kind of has this economic.
It's
Uh,
interesting the word value is coming to mind as well, because we have numerical values, and also we have like ideal
value of,
like,
yeah.
and also like uh yeah, just how you could maybe do math with values which are not numerical values or like quantitative values, but like
Mhm.
qualitative values, and like mathematical operations basically with qualitative values in a sense.
Yeah, and that was basically my idea. Was, well, I just want to kind of, okay, he just said something and it doesn't, like, I don't know how to make sense of that. So let me challenge it, and let me see if I can think of like what would be an alternative to math.
Hmm.
Um, and like you said, the first thing kind of is like this, like qualitativeness, like you're doing
Yeah.
calculations that don't, like, they're not about just numbers of objects or something. It's
Mhm.
little different. So I started, categorizing things as one does,
Mhm.
and started to just notice some patterns. But
Mhm.
I'll because I'll just keep talking about that forever. I don't want to turn that into this, but for like a hint of how to think about what I'm thinking of is just the error in what we normally consider like four dimensionality. Um, so you have length, width, height, and that's the spatial dimensions. Sometimes in math, they'll just throw in a hypothetical fourth dimension and assert that it must exist.
Mhm.
Or the most common thing is to say that, well, we do have a fourth dimension, and that's time, right? So you have a whole 3D structure that moves.
It's like iterated.
Right, it's iterated, and that implies that there's 2 points. But these points, the thing that you just did, if you call this the fourth dimension, is you extended another point out from space. It doesn't work that way. You can't just go, and a fourth dimension is time. No, you have to take this
Yeah, like
whole thing
it has to be
and
kind of.
envision it as its own point
Mhm.
that encompasses a whole 3D reality, right? And then that is compared to another
Mhm.
whole 3D
Have you
reality.
looked at have you looked at Wolfram stuff at all? It also kind of reminds me of the CTMU,
No.
and also
So yeah, and I'm aware that I think a lot of this stuff is already out there. It sounds like Wolfram's stuff is similar, and I think there's some other, like you said, CTMU or other things. So
mhm. I'm also
maybe
yeah.
it's very, very similar, or maybe it's the same, but I don't know anything about those, unfortunately. Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, the other thing that comes to mind is Leibniz. I made a clip. Let me share my screen real
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah, I'm trouncing over these people like Peirce and stuff who I've just heard talked about and never read. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
gonna
there's also
have
yeah,
to
it's
go.
also kind of like Whitehead too, right? I
Mhm.
don't know about just in the
Yeah,
sense where you have the process aspect. And
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
you know,
Whitehead fits in a lot.
yeah, we're talking about time, so it's kind of like everyone has some thoughts on time, but yeah, this Math. This guy talked about.
People ask me all the time,
Can you hear
Bernard,
that?
how do
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
you connect dots so well?
Mm-hmm.
Well, over the course of experimenting, for the last 30 years in trying to create this analogical calculus, I've learned a lot of very specific things about the way analogies function. This formal system allows you to see the difference between apt and inept analogies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I use this very deliberately in constructing my books and laying them out in the particular order that they're laid out in. But anyway, the thing that I began to notice was if you took this system and then applied it to metaphysical texts of any sort, be they Neoplatonism or the Platonists or the Aristotelians, or even you can apply it to basic Hindu conceptions. You can apply it to the Mayan cosmology. In other words, once you learn how to strip away what a remote viewer would call the analytical overlay and look simply at the concepts and the structures, what happens to pop out of all of this is that the metaphor underlies most of these informally explicit systems of metaphysics, and that to me was a huge revelation. And Bernard, I ran across three quotations
There's a little part
from three of the most famous mathematicians in Western history. The first quotation that I ran into was from René Descartes. Okay, inventor of Cartesian coordinate system and analytical geometry and linear algebra. He noticed that in his reading of the ancient mathematicians, the ancient geometers, he came across evidence of what he thought was a system of analysis which allowed them to solve all sorts of problems which we did not yet know and which he thought had been deliberately suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I thought,
so.
whoa.
It feels very right.
Wait, there's one more part. Let me
Then
yes.
I ran into Newton saying the same thing that he thought in his reading of the ancient geometers, that he found a system of analysis that, again, he thought had been deliberately suppressed.
Wow.
And the real kicker for me was, one of my favorite fellows, and in fact my favorite fellow in that little trinity of mathematicians, Gottfried Leibniz.
Leibniz, yeah.
Leibniz was an extraordinary man because he appreciated that not only did one have to have the right technique, one had to have the right symbolization of it. So he devoted much of his mathematical study to coming up with apt symbols of what he was talking about. So he thought that the ancients had a technique of analysis that had either been lost or deliberately suppressed. But then he went on to say some things that were to me, hugely important. He said that it appears that they had, first of all, a calculus, in other words, a formally explicit symbolic algebraic type of system to perform this analysis. And then secondly, he also stated very explicitly that it appeared to him that this calculus had nothing to do with numbers. And thirdly, that they obtained their results by a sort of imitation of calculation. And then finally, this is Leibniz after all that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And finally, he says, it appears to me that this system has been suppressed, that they knew this system and used it to analyze all of their mathematical problems. And I thought, whoa, because what it appeared to me at that point was what all three men may have been talking about is what I've been calling this topological metaphor of the medium, or in some cases, analogical calculus. So I was kind of dumbfounded, Bernard. Newton mentioned.
And then they talk about he also mentions yeah, and he also mentions
Go ahead.
Chomsky's generative grammar. And,
Yeah.
And
Oh, you're right in there with me, dude.
Yep,
It's just like I don't actually know those ideas, but I've heard bits of it talked about, I think.
Same here. Yeah.
Newton mentions that, the ancients disguised their analysis by verbiage. So in other words, he was alive to the fact that they had some sort of symbolic system, an algebra of sorts, to deal with these things. But the key here for me is Leibniz, because Leibniz, I think, because he was not only interested in mathematics, but like many people in the early Enlightenment, he was interested in linguistics. The thing that caught my eye when he said that this was a calculus without numbers and they achieved their results by an imitation of calculating, the first thing I thought of was Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
Because, if you look at Noam Chomsky's transformational generative grammar,
Right.
what you have there is precisely a symbolic calculus that is doing formal processes, but they're totally unrelated to numbers, and they're not even really reducible even to a binary type of logic. So, all of this is huge. It still kind of boggles my mind. And there are aspects of it, I'll be very blunt and honest here, there are aspects of it I will not and do not talk about because they're very, very dangerous. But it is nevertheless, I think, something that it appears to me that those three mathematicians were quite correct, that there was something going on that we haven't really quite clued into in some of these ancient texts. If you understand it and if you really grasp the significance of it, then it would allow you, if you grasped it in all of its fullness, it would allow you to take, all of those library shelves full of grimoires and ritual magic and, magical how to do it cookbooks, and just throw them away because you'd have the key, the formally explicit grammar in the Chomskyan sense, rather than these informally explicit grammars or grimoires, as they're called. You'd have the basis of them, and therefore you wouldn't need them. So I do think that there are people out there seeking this, that know that there's something fundamental.
Something not only far more powerful than the kind of magic practiced by occultists, but so far beyond the scope of that it doesn't make sense to compare them. This is the obsolescence of magic. I don't deal in magical operations. I deal in magical operations per second.
Something fundamental that they've been missing. The essence of the metaphor, again, is it's analogical in nature, and that means, if you want to look at it yet another way, it's a mapping function in topology from one context to another. And now let's put analytical overlay over the term context. It's one discipline to another. So in other words, you can detect analogical similarities. This is why Bernstein's lectures are so hugely important, in my opinion, because he approached the whole thing from an analogical point of view,
Right.
trying to point out not only similarities but discrete and formally specifiable similarities between the functions of natural language and the functions of music, or the rhetorical tropes of natural language.
But it's just so right on it, because I've been thinking this whole time, like, whatever I was like, I'm looking at, I feel like this is the type of thing that Pythagoras and the cult of the Pythagorean cultists were regarding as like a mystery and a secret. You had the reason of like them to have a cult about it is because of this.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't, maybe it's not the exact same thing, but I think there's a similarity there. But whatever he was talking about was like just along that same vein. And then he said something about like qualitative topology or some sort of topology, which is like hugely applicable to the same talking about. It's like acting as a he's is a metaphor of a topology of a shape, right? To basically be talking about these different layers of dimensionality as sort of occurring on a surface of a shape. And that is like kind of where it goes. And then you brought up the grammar thing, which is a point I was going to make, was that actually for me, I found the best results when I've just started writing. And most of my notes is just paragraphs. And I find when I just start writing it and explaining it and trying to put words to it, things click a lot better for me than trying to look at it as a math that I can like solve that way. Sometimes, you know, it needs a little bit of both, and I need to kind of do the puzzle thing or do some calculations. But for the most part, it's like, and I even have a section in one of my sheets called grammar, which is just trying to figure out what the parts of speech of this whole sort of grammar is, you know, and how you want things to relate to each other in order to explain them. So it's very much right along with those thinkers. So I got to try and catch up, but I also want to just get it out before I forget what it is I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I feel 100%, and it fits with the stuff I've been saying too. I think, you know, like talking with this, you know, like a word that I think fits well here is syntax as well. Like it's kind of like the way in a sense, mathematical ways in which language, like we could think about the divine word of God, like that the logos like goes through these permutations are almost mathematical. Like there is a syntax to the way things must happen in some sense, and that we can think of it in this linguistic way as well. And it fits with the eurythmy stuff insofar as there is a syntax to there is patterning, and there are
similar structures that appear in music.
Well, I can tell you,
very interdisciplinary.
Sure, and I can tell you from speaking multiple languages, living in a foreign country, one of the hardest things to do is one, when you're teaching someone English, to teach them the tonal range that transfers as much information as the words do.
Right.
And it's when you're learning another language, you sound flat to other people because you're unable to get the it's almost like a sing-song that underrides like a subcarrier wave, you know, that's underwriting the language and carrying all this information with it.
Right.
And you know, this is I guess pretty much related to what we're on about here.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially with Chomsky, you know, that's definitely part of his deal.
Oh yes, absolutely.
The unspoken grammar. But I've already kept you much longer than I promised. But I do want to plug your website, GizaDeathStar.com.
And there are, let's say, archetypal or recognizable patterns to our language, and it's like this metaphorical. You know, when I smile, it's relatable, and like this is this like mathematics, basically this syntax, which is going on all the time, and in this metaphorical way or something like that. And I think we are all kind of doing this calculus in a sense, like that everything is doing this in a sense, and it maps to we talked about this briefly the other night, how it maps to Galahad's thing about constellation, which is
as soon as you said that constellation thing, I had a moment of like, oh yeah, I see what he's talking about now. This is why you sense this to me, because this is the way it relates. I was like, yeah,
dude, it's like to connect the dots, as it were, or something like to.
It is to liberate the senses from the confines of time and space, to glimpse the rays of light which shine from beyond reality, to make contact with the past, present, and future simultaneously. Though this may sound like science fiction or esoteric fancy, it is in truth what the nervous system is built to do. The human brain is an organ which uses abstractions to connect unconnected sensory events separated by time and space, and give them meaning. Constellation is a way of seeing. It's not a collection of practices. This encapsulates the difference between constellating and not constellating. It's an analogy and not a perfect one, but it illustrates the essential point. In the zoomed out clip, far more information is available, and for this reason, it is much easier to construct a gestalt, that is, a simplified internal model of a system of parts. After I internalize the cosmogram, the strangest thing I notice is that the once chaotic, random activity in the world feels increasingly intelligible and intelligently directed. The apparent connectedness of all events has increased. Subjectively, things no longer seem so disjointed and accidental. I also perceive what I interpret as messages issued from an intelligent source and encoded in my surroundings. I had always read into things and seen signs in questionable contexts, but this is different. These are blazingly salient and impossible to ignore. By perceiving these shining threads, by seeing more connections between past, present, and future, consciousness begins to lose its locality. It spreads out and occupies multiple points in time at once. Though I have made supernatural claims, this is not one of them. All I mean to say is that by perceiving a more continuous narrative, one that is less transitory, proximal, and fragmented, we perceive more future and more past in the present. And because we perceive it, when we act here and now, we are also acting there and then. And if you understand the capstone as being the present moment fully zoomed out, and you understand that the entire structure is vertically isomorphic, then theoretically what that would mean is that at the base of the pyramid is an image which encodes all possible futures. And that's what the present moment is, and it contains all of them. The more integrated the personality, the higher you go. The higher you go, the more potential futures you have access to from any given moment. This ascent would be experienced as an increase in psychic resolution. Your senses and thoughts would seem to get clearer. What we are beginning to witness is the infancy of a new form of perception. In martial arts, if they're teaching you how to strike through a wooden board, they'll teach you not to aim at the board. They'll teach you to aim through the board, at a point on the other side. If you do this, you'll break the board. If you don't, you won't. Now, this has an interesting parallel. In orthodoxy, an icon is said to be a window into heaven. You look through an icon, you don't look at an icon. This is a general truth which I apply to all representation. With any representational pattern, you're always looking through a window at something outside of time. Constellation is the application of these two principles. It's the idea that using symbolic perception, you can look through phenomena at objects outside of time, and that by aiming at those objects, you can break through what otherwise appear to be uncrossable barriers.
And like in his first article about it, he described he used the analogy of a cube where, and this is crazy because that's the experience I had in I'll try and be brief here. I remember I put it really nice and punctually the other night. It was like a nice little concise thing, but or maybe that was with someone else. I think you were there though, or maybe you had just left and I was describing it because I put it in the chat. You can think of a Rubik's Cube where a Rubik's cube um, is the same color on each side, right? Or like one full color on each side, and that the center, when you rotate a side, the center stays the same. And you can imagine, so like that perfect completed cube, as it were, like the archetypal cube is always shining through those center points, like you can see it almost like as an octahedron encoded. And then there's these various permutations, kind of like the syntax of the language or something. And then there, and when I sorry, it's a lot, and I just described this the other night, where I had this experience in 2016, late 2016, 2017, where I saw a cube with an eye in the center of each face of the cube. And it's like how there is this and upon reading his article about constellation, it's that the, you know, like the teleological object of view, or like the octahedron, which is your mythical self, or maybe like the eye, maybe, or like the scourge, you know, the eschatological you, in a sense, like is always shining through your eyes. And that I can and then there's also a way that you could solve the cube, which is to turn the whole body into a larynx, as Steiner would say, or that it already is the case, that that's how it is, and we live into this reality. Um and yeah, so I think there's strong mappings there as well. I kind of, you know,
It
some of
was
my best
definitely,
articulation of it, but you know, something like that. And
it was really, really kind of profound when you told me about this cube thing, and then like I didn't even put it together at first, but then as I was continuing to work, I was like, wait, this is the same thing I'm pretty much talking about. And then I like had the net of the cube, and I was like excited to show you, because like, you know, the net of the cube is a cross, but like
oh yeah, 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 and that's in his
um
hopefully he wouldn't mind. It was a private article, but shoot.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah, I just want to show
You
that.
had a similar setup to me already when I shared that with you. You showed me that same
Yeah.
net, and what is it? From that point, I wanted to tell you something about it that I was thinking I didn't quite have the way to say it, but
Yeah.
you were imagine like my plane when I was talking about physics. So if that top grid was like the domain for God, and where the we can't really see it around, then moving towards the center is like our physical reality, and that's being generated there. And
You're
then
talking about right here, yes. So
yeah, the white square, and then down below that, or maybe to the side, somewhere off from that, like is where we would be inhabited, and I think it'd be that red square. And so that's like the beginnings of our consciousness. And if you were to fold this thing up, what it shows like is actually that we our consciousness is a reflection of God's consciousness. If you make that 3D, you know, they're opposite sides. So, and that kind of
yes, I think I thought about
made in God's image, because the orange and the red would be opposite of each other. So you could say that they're reflected across a line in the center. Yeah.
yes, something like that. Something is happening here. I am
Yeah.
it's very numinous, so it's kind of hard to like track. You know, you can, this is kind of like what I saw, and you know, it maps to this. And
There's
yeah,
definitely something about the cube, and I know there's a lot of stuff online about like the black cube of Saturn and conspiracy stuff and stuff. But it is kind of striking to think like, isn't that in Israel they're just a huge black cube?
Yeah, no, there's also some definitely some weird stuff about this. However, you know, I think it's like you can also see the cube in here. Yes, and there's associations with the cube of Saturn, like
but
okay.
that's where, if you look at this from like a kind of a conservative religious perspective, it becomes that's satanic, and maybe there is like a you know, some sort of Luciferic harmonic thing about it, but looking into the the occult aspect of it as not necessarily just evil, I think kind of helps make more sense of it. Like,
Yes. Yes. And of
So-
course I don't recall the coloration of this cube that I saw, but I know it was not black. I know that it was multicolored, and there's big like red or yellow, or they were rainbow, like wiggly lines behind it. And and of course you have the cube with the New Jerusalem is described as this having something cubic about it, and like they have the eighth day, and people talk about the eighth note or something as well. And
yeah, there's so much esoteric things to go into about the cube, which I'll have to also make a study of, because I need that it all fits in so well. But maybe this cube is kind of pushing into the zeitgeist in various ways, and at a certain time it seemed to be a black cube because it was so much
unconscious is the way that
it was so hard to perceive that, like,
and
even
there's this
the cube is a little shaky because it's so dark.
yeah, and there's this connection in that video I was just showing there. It's Griffin was talking about like the black box is also a thing. It's like this symbolic, it fits with and that's like a technical thing, and how the New Jerusalem is also technical, but it's about conscious technology, or like so something there for sure. It's crazy, dude, and it's so amazing. And also I want to show that this so it was crazy that I didn't actually realize until, like, I had definitely known about the fact that this is the cube as well, right? Because it's also um that's kind of what Galahad's article was, but it really didn't strike me entirely until yesterday, that you have the center of each face encoded here as well. And
and it makes
and
a
yeah,
hypercube as well.
and I made this image not thinking of the cube connection at the time. Dude, I made this image
But you have
not realizing that this is the cube with the eye in the center that I saw. And so I made this one, and then this maps to the shared story guys thing, like surprisingly well, such that you can see uh this like these. I just talked about this in another conversation that I want to post soon. But yeah, you can see that these correspond quite well, like Mercury, or like the third chakra here being the sword of truth, speaking true words, and this being about the spectrum of love and relationality, like the Ankh being a symbol of life and fertility as well, with like the sacral chakra being about uh relating and creativity, and then the three eyes and the heart in the middle, and and um and yeah, so that maps pretty
all
cool.
the
And
sacred
yeah,
geometry shapes that come about. But you have, anytime with the hexagon that you have, you will be able to make a cube, a three-dimensional cube. It looks like a hexagon on flat. So that is right there in front of you, and you don't even see it until you're like, oh, it was a cube the whole time. But what is it? There's a hexagon perfectly shaped, like right at the pole of Saturn, if you look at it in space. And so there's this connection, and Saturn is Chronos, which is time, And I think that's really important to this whole thing, is that it's in a sense becoming, it's compressing into time, or it's becoming more and more apparent. So something about that teleological object.
Yes, and oh man, I was gonna say the cube. Oh man, I lost my train of thought. Something about this one. Oh yes, how the cube for this guy is also goes with the physicality of the body, and it's interesting talking about the black cube. Going with like this would be on this corporeal side, because of course this is abyssal darkness or corporeal darkness, and so like maybe this is a more plutonic energy of the cube would be the black cube perhaps, or something, and you have the golden cube. Oh, it's so beautiful, dude. It all freaking fits so perfectly. And you have the golden cube more towards the sun. And then when you put it with the Abraxan cosmogram, that would be like around here. It's on this harmonic, like, which goes with Saturn and Yaldabaoth and Aquarius, being this this corporeal thing as well, and the material, and it's just
like, I'm always impressed when you and Keelan and some other people talk about the astrological and some of the other like mythological symbolism of these things, and put it in that way. So looking at it very symbolically, which I guess I've had trouble with. I have passing familiarity with most Greek myths, especially as the ones that have been talked about at length through like Freud and Jung and stuff, and how those kind of this like mythopoetic, and even a lot of the stuff that like Jordan Peterson was doing early on, or continues to do sometimes, talk about this biblical interpretations in these ways. But that is not the way that like I'm intuiting the same way that you seem to have a much more intuitive grasp over like the symbols and
loose associational thinking.
Yeah. And I guess, I'm coming to find out what those like things mean. How can you say like, oh, Aquarius has this sort of quality to it? I'm like, well, where do you like, is it just because a book said it? I think that's most people's perception, is that like an astrology, a symbol in astrology is just something could be made up. Okay, we assign it to this one because it looks like water, so it must be emotional because we're kind of this thing, but it's just some metaphor that somebody said and they stuck with it because they copy each other. But actually it's like a lot more that goes into determining what is the relationship of this archetype to our psychology and spirituality.
For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of it is like that they kind of evolve over time, and I also think that it's just a large learning, like it's kind of an initial learning curve with astrology. It's just like all these cryptic symbols, like what do they refer to, and that, and it's cool. That reminds me of I wanted to bring this up again. The I'm not sure if Keelan saw it. I sent it to him, but this is epic. This is this is your birth chart in comparison to Keelan's birth chart. It's kind of topical to what we're saying right now. And this is crazy. There's also some connections with my birth chart and his. But just to see that you guys have your rising and setting sign like pretty much exactly aligned, and then your midheaven axis is directly aligned with his nodal axis, and square to his sun. So these are like some very deep connections for sure, astrologically speaking. I won't get into all the correspondences and such, but
whatever this ascendant, descendant, like they're opposites, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that is, I think that's the thing I feel the most with Keelan. It's hard to say it, but like it's like we're the same, but the opposite version. Like everything he,
yeah,
just like I was saying with the path of life and how we came to these points and things in our process and the way that we like. I don't go into depth at all as much as I should on studying like certain topics or things. I'll tend to just try and get a high level understanding as much as until I'm satisfied that I kind of get the idea and then move on. And so I'm like very broad in my research and things and not as organized as I feel. Keelan really sinks his teeth in and really chews on ideas and gets like the meat of it, gets down to the marrow in a sense, and he'll come to different like ways of being able to express it, and then he puts it in a way that it clicks to me. But I like, I'm much different.
Yeah, over here so I can see it. Yeah. I mean, maybe one way of kind of interpreting this is, the ascendant is kind of where you're coming from, or like how you move into the world in a sense, and then the descendant is kind of like where you're going, or like how things wrap up in a sense, or like the type of, I don't know exactly the terminology to use, but something like that. Because also the north node is also this future karma of like where you're going type of thing, whereas the south node is the inheritance of the past. But this is almost more in like the type of vibe that you have moving, like the type of demeanor almost, whereas this would be more about like destiny almost, or something like that, and or like some more deep learning or something like that. And so in that regard, he would be kind of coming into the world with this Aquarian thing where you may be more so with a Leo disposition using the tropical zodiac, and then there's kind of like you're going to where he's coming from. So like you guys kind of meet like like, oh yes, I have things to learn from you and you have things to learn from me, because this is where we're both going in kind of opposite directions a little bit. And then the north node, this would be like what is your destiny? What is your contribution? Or what are you learning to incorporate into the divine life of God or something? And that is directly conjunct his midheaven, which is, I've heard, associated with kind of your social. This is how Keelan shows up in the world. This is his Sagittarian YouTube channel, and like the stuff that he, like the spiritual ideas which he is seeding into, or like that people know him for, as it were. And like, so that's kind of a cool connection there. And yeah, it's freaking, astrology is amazing, dude. And kind of in a perhaps vein, I want to show my own. I want to show my own as well.
It's really shocking to me because with Keelan, and I mean a lot of people in there too, but Keelan is just like, it's so specific. The interest that he has, like I got into his channel because it was talking about ether theory, and that's like a super niche topic already, right? But then when I found out like the rest of the stuff he talks about is like anthropology, psychology, spirituality, and like scientism, and music, and not even just music, but music to like a like music theory, and as a math and like connections, like those are all things that I've just never had anyone to talk to about because nobody cares. And so to see that in a person, like you have all these very similar interests, and he goes deeper, like I said, into so much of it But it's really striking that is why we're the same, I think, but opposite. And then your chart, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I feel like I had a screenshot, and I'm also gonna have to blur out those things because it's other people's charts, and I don't know if they want their. I pulled them up by accident, but the main thing you can see here is that let me set this up real quick. You got the blah, blah, blah. Take these out. Take this out. Put to these. All right. Like.
I'll be really excited if Keelan ever puts out the video explaining exactly like what his theory would be on how astrology actually takes place. I know he's talked about it a good amount, but it seems like he was more in the long format video. He was talking a lot more about what the actual signs mean and how the system should be interpreted, and not as much the mechanistic kind of explanation of how do these things actually have anything to do with reality. And I think that would be.
Sorry, I'm a little distracted here. I'm trying to get this in my freaking vein.
No worries. Yeah.
You can see that my nodal axis, or my ascendant, is conjunct his north node up here. So we have this this shared axis here, and then we both have Mercury in Leo, and my sun, my nodal axis is conjunct his sun. So that's definitely some pretty tight connections as well. And and we have Venus square, and yes. But you were saying yes.
How do you see your like the ways in which your personality kind of intersects with Keelan?
Oh man. All right. I don't know. Well, according to this, this would be that like his destiny or his learning or something has something to do with how I move into like the way I kind of where I'm coming from or something like that. And then his my sort of learning or whatever has to do with like his Virgo conscious, like his sense of ego, selfhood, or something like that. Largely, I'm chuffed about this degree right here because this in the cosmogram, this would be the you have Pisces over here, and then Aquarius with the cup bearer. Like you have the 4 fixed signs here. Yeah. So then this would be Sagittarius right here. And interestingly, the galactic center is actually in Sagittarius right here, and it's right at these as you can see right here, very close to here, and I don't know, just symbolically, it's all I love it, and yeah, so that kind of strikes me. This is a very idealistic, spiritual kind of, like a visionary type of vibe, and so we have a connection in that regard. And then something about this Pisces Virgo axis really speaks to me about like an something to do with Christianity. Like maybe rework, like engaging with
That's interesting
that,
that you just said that. It kind of, because obviously the Pisces and Christianity thing is well trodden, but it always kind of was interesting because I noticed that there is a virgin in the story, but I never I was like, well, it doesn't track that well because isn't that not even there? But to see that
I think it's huge.
It's opposite. You could see that in a sense, well, born of a virgin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like going across.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. Yeah, and this would insinuate that this next Keelan chopped it up in his recent video by Pisces being like the first 1,000 years more so, and then the second 1,000 years ruled by Virgo, ruled by Mercury, which is this more alchemical, discursive sort of uh, thinky type of thing, and that would map, and that would suggest that uh, this next one will be this Aquarius Leo axis. Interestingly, um, but yeah, I know. I think that the Mary connection, that would definitely make sense, and I think it's a huge part of
Yes.
marriage.
So as far as like the ages, astronomical ages, we're in Pisces, but going towards Aquarius. And so the
Yeah,
natural line follows the other way, like the reflection of Virgo into the Pisces
yeah,
is becoming less Virgo and more towards what's that, Leo. And
yes.
so it's shifting from more
The Virgin to the Lion, which is beautiful because um Force, um this is the tarot card Force, um right here.
This signifies the fact that the virgin nature
Uh
always takes part in miracles, and this
and this is uh
mhm.
this virginal force, which is quality over quantity, and and beautiful connections coming to mind between the Virgin and Leo, because this is a card that goes with Leo as well. Oh my
The
gosh,
Virgin
so
and
good.
Leo. Wow. Oh yeah. No. Okay. Yeah.
It's so
Sorry.
good.
Like slow because I was like too busy thinking about what I already know about the card. But then yeah, that's perfect. What we're talking about. The Virgin is kind of the strength is not that Leo. It's at least for now. The Virgin is the one that's restricting the force, the wild force, and into an intelligibility, and that's more like the real strength is this kind of reserve in a sense to
It's a
resist.
beautiful. That's from Tom Berg's Meditations on the Tarot, where he talks about this virginal force, as it were, this true force. It goes with authority and stuff as well. It's I'll butcher it if I try and, but yeah, I would recommend that where he talks about that. And yeah, it's crazy thinking about this astrological connection. How that would. I wonder if that would. I wonder if maybe there's a way where we could see, you know, maybe a brief excursion into the realm of tarot to look for connections. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that that connection is there for me, like in the tarot. Like, okay, there's something about this virginal. Uh, there's a femininity to strength, and these things
yeah,
are
there's really
they
so
could
much
be very abstract, and to find something that could kind of connect it that coherently in an astrological framework, like those two are actually directly opposed. This is another one to me that is interesting, the moon card, because I've always like just had this mystery of why is there a cancer crab, like a blue cancer crab coming out on the moon card. What does
yes,
it mean, I guess?
dude. What's his name? Chris Gabriel from Meme Analysis did a. He's talked about it. That's like the lobster, and it also goes with like a.
The
You
last
got you got the lobster monkeys from Groom Grace. I mean, you probably don't know about that, but also like the Jordan Peterson lobsters,
Jordan Peterson
and
lobsters. Yeah.
and yeah, it's interesting. If we were looking at in the Leo card, you can see something of Virgo in the Virgin, right? And then maybe in the Aquarius card, you can see something of Pisces, which indeed you can. You have the pool of water. It's
So
interesting.
the moon,
The moon goes with
the
so
moon is
actually, yeah, the moon is the card for Pisces, and then the card for the moon is actually the High Priestess. Yes.
so Pisces, but
Yeah, so
there's
you can see.
something
right here. The high priestess. The high priestess goes with the moon.
So in the Rider Waite deck specifically, there's a couple instances of this lobster, and I think
Really? I'm trying to remember the other ones.
yeah, let me look here. I thought I remembered for some reason that it was blue. I always remember that lobster being a blue one and thinking
Your camera. Whoa, you have a magic camera, dude. It's following you around. That's crazy.
Oh, it's yeah, whatever feature the iPad just does.
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah. Let me look at the cards here really quick. See if I can.
Technology blows my mind. Yeah, so let me put this back on the screen. Yeah, this is
Okay, so
very
it is
interesting.
right there on the moon card.
The other card that I'm reminded of, or the other, and the Virgo card is the Hermit. The Hermit, interestingly, but yeah, these are interesting. You got the pool of water. Here, thing is coming out of the water. And here, water is going in to the pool of water. That's interesting. Also, I learned recently that this goes with the North Star as well. And Stella, it was called Stella Maris, and people have talked about Maris maybe has this connection with maritime and Mary, and because people on the ocean would call this the Star of Mary, or Mary would, there would be something there, and how this is supposed to depict the North Star in on the card here. As you can see, the other stars kind of around it, and that's an interesting connection, which I actually just learned yesterday. It's kind of pretty neat.
Yeah. It just never stops with this stuff to
really,
be that I don't know if I'm able to
let me
think about what I was remembering, if I'm wrong or if I just don't see it right now. But there was some ideas I was playing with that lobster, but to me, for some reason, it seemed like it was had to do with cancer, but that's probably just because they're both similar animals. So I'm not sure if that.
I feel like I might have heard somewhere that there is another lobster somewhere, but I do not.
I don't know why it would stick out to me so much if it was the only one. I swear it's on.
Yeah, well, that is
yeah.
It also goes with that's the connection with Cancer, like because Cancer is like a crab, and the moon rules Cancer, so there's kind of a connection there. And of course, this is of course a wildly feminine.
For me, that I noticed just because my moon is in Cancer, and
me too. Oh wait, no, my moon is in Pisces. My sun is in Cancer. Yes.
Oh. And also then for whatever way I was looking at birth cards, I think it came to be the moon and the hermit. And
did you happen to pull that one 2 weeks ago when we had a lunar eclipse in Virgo?
No.
Okay. that would be fitting.
But yeah, so there was something that I was trying to understand, I guess, or maybe it's just like, if I think of it, I'll definitely try and.
Yeah, I feel like I was just looking on Google. I didn't see a thing about other lobsters, but I feel like there might be lobsters. I feel like there are multiple. Maybe not though.
Yeah, I don't know why it's in my head. Some of these like characters have like clothing that has symbols that are elsewhere too, so maybe it's
Yeah, it
just.
could be that. Yeah. Yeah.
But
That
anyway,
guy.
very interesting to
Yeah.
go in depth about those cards and
Yeah, and the axes, the various axes, and yeah. One more thing about the moon card though, that um meme analysis. I'm not sure if you're subscribed to that channel. He did a good video where he was talking about the moon and the lobsters. You might find that one interesting, particularly resonant, perhaps.
yeah. I'll
Yeah, maybe I'll send it to you.
yeah, send it to me. I'll try and check that out. I'm sure I've seen that channel before, but I don't know if I'm subscribed. I don't think I've seen the one. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe do you want to watch a little bit of it? We could watch a little bit. Maybe we could probably wrap up with that. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Go ahead. Put it on. I'll see what I can glean from it. I should get on to doing some work today
Yeah,
too.
no, this is probably good. We could probably wrap it up. And but yeah, let's see what this strapping young gentleman has to say about this.
Blue.
This is Meme Analysis, and today we're going to be talking about
That's really loud.
the blue lobster. Now, this is a meme that you might not have seen a lot of, but I'd imagine that you've come across it maybe if you were scrolling on TikTok or scrolling through YouTube Shorts. It's a short format, and what it does is that as you're scrolling and going through all the degenerate content and you come across a satisfying video, whether it's sexual or a fight about to happen or you know, those cutting videos, all that, and then it's interrupted by this blue lobster with classical music. And I found this one very interesting because, number one, I'm very interested in animals in memes, especially crustaceans or isopods. I find them very fascinating because they relate to some of my favorite archetypes, as we're going to get to later in the video. But to start, let's talk about what those videos that you're initially watching are. And they are...
Okay, so this is a 17-minute video, so we don't have to watch the whole thing, but he connects it. Here's where he talks about the moon card.
A symbol of the unconscious mind, because it comes out at night. It's in the dark, and the unconscious is that dark, watery space. So Jung also talks about looking into water, and when you see movement under it, that again is a symbol of the unconscious, more difficult, which is the tarot symbolism of this. So this card, the moon, even though it does not correspond with Cancer, with the lobster, with the crab, this card is the ideogram. It's a picture that represents the idea of this meme. So you have the super ego, excuse me, give me a second, I'm being stupid. Let's start from the bottom. We have the id, we have these base drives, and then you have the videos that you're watching, the ego. You have the people who make these videos, the dogs, and then you have the judgment of the moon, the judgment of the heavenly body, which is the superego. So you have the videos, you watching the videos, and the judgment upon you.
There we go. Kind of cool. He's great. I really like his he has like this big kind of theory about memes, like how everything is memes, and
So it is Cancer.
it fits in a sense.
Looks like. Anyways.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I actually hadn't even like gotten to the point of looking at what cards correspond to what sign. So I'm curious now, what's the
Yeah.
Capricorn
Here.
Association said to be.
Capricorn goes with the devil.
No.
No.
Yeah. Okay. I think I have heard that. The
I
devil.
say it.
It's like
Yep.
the devil card, but the devil card is.
What was I looking up here? I was gonna pull up something. And I
I
forgot.
think it makes more sense when you combine it, at least for me, with the whole Kabbalistic tree of life and looking at them in terms of the path of severity and the path of duty or whatever, kind of lines up that way to make sense
Yeah,
of
I definitely think that is
the
also-
devil. It's not like as much what the modern Christian conception of a devil is. It's more just like this kind of a severity in the sense like if you do
Yes.
bad things and you bind yourself to evil in this way, you choose to be shackled to evil, there is like real consequence to that,
Yes.
and it's not avoidable in that sense. But
Yes. And I think severity is a very key word because that pillar, like there's the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy, and like it's like consonance and dissonance, and how we have both of these in music. Very beautiful. And who'd have thought? Who'd have thought the devil is also beautiful in a sense? And but yeah, these are the correspondences, and I'm very much again inclined to recommend. I kind of breeze over the force thing with Leo because honestly it's almost like an emotional thing for me. I think it's so beautiful, the virginal force. I'm not a virgin, but you know, it's the it's I've made a couple videos about that and I've heard people talking about it a bunch. It's very a beautiful.
So are we just going in order then for the cards? Wait.
This one is, I don't know why they have Capricorn on the top. It's a little bit of devil worshippery perhaps. But yeah, these are basically in order, yeah. And then once it starts with Aries, Taurus, this one is card number 4, you know, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then there's here, then you have the Tower, and the Tower goes with Mars. I made this little guide actually.
So yeah, we're skipping some.
We made this little guide here. Might find that helpful.
Yeah, no, definitely. You should yeah, send me that.
Yeah. And then also over here you can see the it's kind of gonna be blurry.
This is perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's a little out of date. I kind of cobbled it together before I like knew a ton about astrology. Not that I know a ton now, but you know, I definitely know more. And some of it is out of date, but these are the correspondences that definitely go together. There's also the elements. That's one thing that I didn't put in here is that you have the elemental correspondences where the Fool can go with I made a video recently about this.
Right. Yeah, they have their elemental correspondences for sure, and have even a Hebrew.
To me, if you look at that,
yeah,
correspondence as well. So it should alternate going through, right? Starting with air, earth, water, fire.
Yeah, it's like this. Glorious. This is the imagery that I should have pulled up at the beginning. This is you can see how it also is the minor arcana as well, with the deacons, which are like basically each sign can be divided up into 3 sections, and
yeah,
the correspondences.
Yeah, and it's very very apropos to what I'm working on too, with the aspects being fourfold,
Mm-hmm.
and the then you kind of cross correlate those to the so those are the suits, but you have each expression of each suit in a different I lost my my train of thought trying to think about but you have this version of Earth represented this way, or even with the zodiac signs, right? You have the cardinal, and then fixed, and then
yeah, these would be the cardinal signs. These are the fixed signs, and then these are the mutable.
So it's like 3 dimensions of a fourfold thing, in a sense. Like if you want to fully understand the Earth, you need to have the 3. Yeah. So
yeah,
feels right and
yes,
important.
glorious. We've solved all the problems.
Yeah, I guess there's not much left to do. I can finally stop researching and just go watch Netflix.
We've done it.
Well,
cool, man. This has been great. I think I will stop the recording and we can do final words and stuff. But yeah, thanks for I hope you enjoyed it, and all the various things that people say. The stuff in words and various vibes, words, etc. and yeah, let's do maybe let's do it again sometime. And
sure. Maybe we can come up with a little bit more.
Yeah, like a particular topic, like a particular something more dialed in. I can see that. Yeah.
Just to keep us on track, because once about this thing, and then we have to bring up this, and then we get so
I'm pretty happy. Yeah. This first one was very good. I thought we hit all sorts of stuff. I enjoyed talking with you, and
it was fun. It just felt just pretty much the same as what we've been doing. So I think that's
you're a YouTube celebrity now.
Hey, on there some shit. I gotta see, like I'll see in a couple of weeks if like it's how many views is that, and I'll be like, can't believe these people are just listening to me talk.
Oh, dude, I think people are gonna eat this up. Hopefully, or something like that. Some words according to those vibes, and yeah. Any
chop it up. That's cool too. If you don't want to, I
think I'll probably just post the whole thing, just how it is, if you're cool with that. And
yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Any final words before I stop the recording? Do you want to tell anything to? Of course, the whole world is watching us. Of course, every human.
No, yeah, just if people are interested in this topic, they should
engage. Perhaps, perhaps
hang out in Discord.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thanks for watching, everybody.